misconception that, young people don't get sick. The average young person doesn't get sick, but if you have enough young people who are getting the virus, some of them get extraordinarily sick. We've had patients on ECMO. We've had a young mother who was on ECMO for over 2 weeks to save her life. We did, thankfully, able to go home to her baby after more than a month after she delivered. These are tough situations, and so we have to have everybody, and right now, frankly, with the data we're seeing, especially the younger population, recognizing that there is no way to get this under control unless everybody does their part.
Is the treatment also evolving? We don't have a vaccine yet. We don't know when we'll get one. There's a lot of talk about treatments. For example, remdesivir. We heard from Gilead today. It's going to be pretty expensive to administer this stuff. How are you treating these people who really have severe cases?
Yeah, that's a great question. And also, I think a cause for some cautious optimism, at least once somebody gets hospitalized, is that the outcomes have really improved a great deal. So mortality has gone down significantly, and it doesn't completely compute just with the age shift. That's a major factor. But we have learned so much. We've been caring for patients with COVID for over 100 days now. Our clinicians are smart. They've learned a lot. We were the first hospital in the country to use convalescent serum, and we've been very active in the remdesivir trials. And in both cases, we think those have been quite helpful. But there's a lot of other things that are more nuts and bolts, honestly. Proning, which means putting somebody on their stomach. It was a technique that had been used in the past for really sick people on a ventilator in an ICU. Now it's recognized really for patients who are in an acute care bed, so they're not so sick to be in ICU, and it's actually preventing people from deteriorating. So what we're seeing is, even though our volumes compared to the last peak are well more than double, our ICU utilization is up from that time, but not nearly as much. And I think we're keeping people out of ICU. The length of stay we're seeing is about a day and a half shorter for people who do stay here. So those are some good news, but the challenge is that in the community, this virus is spreading rapidly, and unless our community works together to get that spread under control, we are very concerned that many thousands of people could get infected, people will die, and the economy really will take a real beating again, as either through incremental government orders, or frankly just simply because the virus is effectively disrupting organizations and companies and businesses' ability to function, that we will see significant negative economic impact in addition.
Dr. Bowman, if you had your druthers, what would you want out of the government? And I'm talking about the state government with Governor Abbott, who was relatively eager to get things opened back up, had to dial back on taverns, I think you call them. What would you like to see out of the governor? What would you like to see out of the mayor, out of the Harris County government to try to really curtail this?
So we were really grateful on Friday. The governor shut down all bars across the state. I think that's been a really troublesome area. I mean, clearly we've seen young people, but I don't want to blame this all on young people. That's not really my point, but that's not a safe setting. I think there are some additional settings we really need to question right now. One of the things I'm very concerned about is the size of gatherings that are still allowed. I'm really concerned about the 4th of July. So when we look back at the data, really the thing that to me accelerated things so much in our community was Memorial Day. We saw people just sort of throwing caution to the wind, saying, hey, summer's here, we're going to relax, we're going to do whatever we want. We saw them cramming into swimming pools, cramming across a beach, having all sorts of barbecues. Nobody was protecting themselves, and that kind of looseness has kind of continued. I think it's starting to shift back, thankfully, now, but it's not moved back enough. And I'm really worried that we're a few days away from the 4th of July, and if Memorial Day was throwing a bunch of wood on the fire and in the early kindling, and that we've kind of been stoking for a while, we have the risk that a 4th of July could be like pouring a can of gasoline. And so we really need to figure out how we message that our patriotic duty to each other is to keep each other safe, and we need to stay home. I mean, we need to celebrate the 4th of July with the people we live with in our households. Have a backyard barbecue with your own family or your household members and not with others, and watch fireworks from a car. Don't get out of your car. Stay home, watch something on TV, but don't celebrate with large gatherings. We really need to keep people away from interacting with each other in that way, because I'm very concerned that'll accelerate the spread even more.
And we certainly need the community to participate, to comply with that. But why doesn't the government just order everybody to stay home? I mean, here I am in New York. They ordered us. Governor Cuomo ordered us to do it. It wasn't very popular, but he said for a period of time, you just got to stay home and stay with your family. Why don't they do that in Houston? Why don't they do that in Texas?
Well, it's kind of above my pay grade, one of those things. I mean, we obviously have been in a regular conversation with all government leaders about what the situation on the ground, where we are. And the good news is the hospitals are managing this so far. The bad news is the virus is spreading very rapidly in our community. And of course, we cannot indefinitely continue to ramp up hospital beds. I think we have some runway on that, but we've got to get everyone doing the right thing across our community. And we need very consistent messaging from all levels of government, all of the press. One of the unfortunate things we've ended up with is that, masks have become such a political issue. The reality is masks were one of the best techniques to allow us to open up the economy. And unfortunately, this dialogue started that said they weren't the right thing. They are most emphatically the right thing to do right now. And we need everybody wearing a mask when they do go out. But frankly, we're getting to a point where if you're not going for a valid, good reason to an important business around town, particularly if you're vulnerable, you need to stay home, and you need to stay home with your family. We have to stop all the connections that are happening in the community to get some better control of this, and then, we'll be in good shape, and we can do all the things we're trying to do, which is protect first and foremost each other, but also protect our economy. This doesn't have to be a dichotomy. There can be an and if we all do our part, but the and of having an economy that can still function and, of course, protecting people only works if you have across Houston the 7 million people, each and every one of them, doing this for each other.
Thank you so much. Sounds like very sound advice. That's Dr. Marc Boom. He is the president and CEO of Houston Medical. Coming up here on Balance of Power, we're going to talk with a former senior State Department official